Upon finishing the last life update email, Grace, Johanna, Taylor, Benj, Emerson, and Jack came back from doing, well, from the sound of it, basically nothing. And such was the trajectory for the rest of the evening. Because, lol, people are indecisive. Thus, after observing this trend and giving Grace a bit of space to rectify it, I think I literally said, "Do you want me to take over?" And she was like, "Yes, please." So, my TE booted up, and we got stuff done. Hee, my specialty, XD. Also, seeing the Belchers, the New Zealand people staying with us at the time, had not obtained a social in and were clearly bored, I got them on board with the plan, and once Elias had taken a painfully long time to eat his soup, we hopped in the car and drove to Estes. That drive was actually really pretty. I directed Benj via the back way, and there was a big, pretty sunset. Plus, I think the Belchers were pretty blown away by the mountains, 'cause, lol, who wouldn't be if you didn't see them every day? On the way up, we listened to some painful country music, along with some quality songs, thanks, Benj. And then, once we made it to Estes, we just walked around by the river till we met up with Ben and Rebecca, and then Ben took us back to this hole in the wall, which I had literally commented on earlier in the walk, but I thought they had sealed it up. Actually, though, I just remembered it in the wrong place. Hence, what proceeded was all of us climbing through this little hole into this dank space beneath the boardwalk, with access to the shops below. It was interesting. I was barefoot, so most of my time was spent trying to make sure I didn't step on debris in the dark. But yeah, cool place to go in. Cool place to actually go in, since I had only peered in the past. From there, we walked some more. Ben took us to this cool overlook that's relatively new, and that was pretty sweet. And then it was clear the kiwis were feeling tired, so we went back to the cars. A few other things occurred. Leaves were violently thrown in faces, mostly Johanna's. Taffy and ice cream consumed. The question of when thighs ended and buttocks began humorously raised, but overall, it was just pretty chill. We drove back down listening to Owl City music, and once we got back, we all went to sleep. The next morning, I, due to the spurious decision to dish out copious amounts of money so that I could finally get the off-label drugs I needed, oh my gosh, so hard to do, but I finally did it. It then meant I had an appointment all the way down in Colorado Springs that I now had to attend. Hence, upon rising and doing funime, I set out. First, I stopped by John's to grab an Xbox controller of Alan's, who lives in Colorado Springs, and that needed to be delivered. It turned out that his house was much less on the way than anticipated, but whatever, such is life. I then stopped also in at the Myers to pick up my willing accomplice for this lengthy driving endeavor, none other than the suave gentleman Sam. Upon chucking him in my car, we then drove 2.5 hours straight, just talking about what it meant for him to be an ESFJ and how to min-max his life given his stats, plus pitfalls to look out for and the like. And then, since we arrived with 30 minutes or so to spare, we got burgers at this fancy burger joint, and they were pretty good. I then went in and talked with my new pseudo-cancer doctor for about an hour. I say pseudo because, as all these guys are very intent to remind me, they aren't an oncologist. They're a family doctor who does oncology. Anyway, that was good. By far the most conversation-like conversation I had yet had, and as aforementioned, this guy actually got me the drugs for realsy, so that's obviously the biggest reason it was good. Overall, I'm not enchanted with the guy, but at this point I have come to resonate with the wisdom of mediocrities. Good enough. ... Once we got out of that, and Sam had practiced cube solving for over an hour, XD, I then dropped off said aforementioned package before driving to Molly's house, 'cause lol, she lives in Denver, and I was like, why not? However, when we got to her home, a new unfortunate things happened. First, I was reintroduced to a hiking girl, aka the girl on the hike that Molly explicitly promised me was not a date, but was also totally intended as a date. But perhaps more unfortunately, aka the girl I was super rude to, 'cause lol, it's S tier or nothing, baby! Sorry, girl whose name I can't remember, ... I very much cringed looking back on how I acted. So yeah, for those of you that remember that whole occasion, she was she. So that was lovely, ... Though in all fairness, I think we both handled it pretty well. Bet you she's an INFJ, now that I think about it. So of course she was overly polite, while also being subtly passive-aggressive. Hee hee, classic. Anyway, that wasn't too bad, of course. But Sam was just chilling beside me, and I have little doubt his FE soul was dying. Hence, I suspect there was some collateral damage from the encounter, but I felt fine. However, the much more unfortunate thing is I insulted Molly's intelligence in jest. I was genuinely joking, but she took that hardcore to heart, which of course she did, because ESFP, aka tertiary thinking function, aka insecure about intelligence, which if I had stopped to think for a moment, I would have seen that coming, but nope. My TE was just bantering, and then I stepped on a landmine. What did Mom used to say? ... People are loaded with landmines. Man, pulling that quote from the archive, I think she said that like 4 years ago or something like that. Anyway, all that to say, the rest of the occasion was soured by me trying to make up for being insensitive and Molly being like, ow, ... So that was sad. I do genuinely enjoy Molly, but when I'm around her, I fall back to an older version of Alex, mostly because we haven't really interacted since the Alex 2.0 revolution. We are on 2.1 now, by the way, ... Dancing brought us into a new era, XD. So I just tend to do what's comfortable and expected of me. But I really should stop doing that, because the continual result of acting in that antiquated manner is hurting her feelings, which Alex 2.1 is not a fan of, ... But regardless, she made Sam and I 7 out of 10 church coffee. We talked some more, and then Sam and I began the trek back, now scheduled to return to his abode significantly later than first anticipated. Since the conversation had been mostly analytical up until that point, I decided to take it in a more personal direction, because lol, Sam is dominant FE, so that's what he values. And it seems like that was definitely a good call, because we had a really good conversation for the last hour and a half. That conversation made the whole drive extra worth it. Though it still would have been worth it had we not had the more personal conversation, at least to me. Smile / wink. Oh yeah, I dropped Sam off, very glad he came with me, and then I got home while everyone was doing the fun things, but I was too tired, so I went to bed instead. But then, lo and behold, the skies cracked and rain poured down, and suddenly, as if washed away by the torrent, my fatigue was gone, and I felt a compulsion to go run barefoot in the downpour, so I did. I ran through the thick of the rain, and then, once I reached Alley Cat, it had mostly dissipated, which was quite sad. But, nevertheless, everyone came out and we walked around CSU post-rain. Anika, the female belcher, who is also one of the kiwis staying at our house, actually approached me, instead of me initiating, and asked about Jungian psychology, and particularly her type. And so my TE went brrr, and within about 3 minutes, I had discovered she was an ISFP, and began unveiling the depths of her consciousness to her. Hee hee. It was very fun. She was definitely somewhat taken aback with all the things I knew, but mostly it was just fun for me, for someone to be that interested. So yeah, for the rest of the night I unpacked all the personality stuff, with brief interludes for sliding down grassy hills, or shooting sprinklers at one another. Here's a picture someone took of our CSU walk. Thereafter, we got back home, I got a foot back massage, courtesy of Taylor, and then I explained type theory to all the peoples, meaning Grace, Anika, Katie, Elias, and Taylor. Though Grace and Katie kind of just did their own things, because lol and E, and that was very fun. Hence, while I set out to go to bed at 10, I ended up going to bed at 1:30 in the morning, XD, but I went to bed happier, so it was worth it. The next day, Anika and Elias went over to Ellerslie. Ellerslie? Yeah, Ellerslie, and hence left my abode, so I bid them farewell, but not before getting both their contacts on Messenger. Wink. Elias chastised his sister for giving her number to strange men, XD. Hee hee, that guy is a lad. I think I would enjoy him if I got to know him. ... I then packed for my trip to California because, see, I had decided to go to the Bethel healing rooms. Quick background tangent. So basically, half my aunts and uncles and half my cousins live in Redding and are pretty darn active members of Bethel, which, in the off chance you don't know the name, it's the title of what may be the most charismatic church in existence. Hence, a while back, my Uncle Dathan and Aunt Hillary, oh, this is going to be good, offered to pay my way to visit the healing rooms because, lol, cancer. And while at first I was like, yeah, nah, because I really don't have much faith God works like that these days. Though I am theologically a continualist, aka not cessationist, because the biblical evidence just isn't there in my opinion. I, functionally, am fairly cessationist just because my personal experience I've never witnessed a definitive healing. Anyway, the point is I don't really have much faith that healings like that happen, much even if I technically believe they do. But as I was on the Marlin trip, I had some time to think. A 26-hour-long car ride will do that for you, XD. So I ended up being like, why not? It was free. I would get to see my family, who I haven't seen in ages. And who knows? Maybe God would do a miracle, and how cool would that be? Hence, on the Maryland trip, I decided I would do it. I let Mom know, and hence the gears were set in motion, the plane tickets booked, and the trip arranged. Thus, stepping out from our tangent and coming back to the present, the day had come for said plans to be actualized. Thus, Dad and I, Dad came with me for this trip, set out to Denver early, but got there just on time because of major traffic. We then had to park in the big expensive parking lot because the other one was all full, which was a first. And then we both got a burrito and got on the plane. During the flight over, I listened to Personality Hacker, took notes, and also stared at a liquid ball of sunfire. And no, I don't mean the sun. I mean this really cool power generation thing in, Utah. My climate change professor talked about this, actually. Only thing I remember from that class. But basically, they just have, 2,000 mirrors that all concentrate the sun on this central salt tank or something like that, and then use the molten salt to power turbines. Here, I wonder if I can find a picture online. Here we go. This thing. Kind of cool, right? They're actually massive, like crop circles of mirrors. Anyway, all that to say, I started at that and hurt my eyes, learned things, and then arrived at California where Aunt Hillary, Sam, and Annalise all came to pick us up. Sam and I rode in the front with the two parents and Annalise squished in the back. Don't really know how that makes sense, but hey, I appreciated it, XD, and we just talked. It was interesting to see Annalise, become interesting because prior to this point, she was kind of just a child. But nope, she's got a perspective, love life, a bunch of friends, and a proficiency for dance. Sam was fairly similar to how I remember him, though. A bit more built and less gangly, but otherwise pretty close to how I remember him being. Wink. So yeah, good conversations on the way back to their house. Then once we got there, we just dropped Dad off at Aunt Amber's and Uncle Doug's, because he was sleeping over there. And then the rest of us went back to Uncle Dathan and Aunt Hillary, and I just conked out. The next morning, they made me breakfast, which was big nice, and then it was off to the healing rooms, and since I expect most of you find this subject quite intriguing, let me spell this part of my past out in a touch more detail. Also, disclaimer, I understand I'm treading into controversial water here, and that what I'm about to say could offend people on either side of the charismatic divide. Hence, given this knowledge, I'm going to do what I always do. Just be as honest and objective as I can, XD. If you can help it, please don't take offense to the following rendition of events. All right, so to start off, we had this orientation-like hallway experience where, after we had signed our waivers, which, might I just say, really kind of caught me off guard. I mean, don't get me wrong, waivers make infinite sense legally. I just really didn't see that coming, given charismatics aren't usually the, but what if they sue us type XD. But regardless, ... We all sat down in this very normal church hall. We had some orientation dudes be like, yo, Bethel is cool. And just earlier today, we had a guy come in on crutches because there was a cancerous tumor the size of a fist on the back of his knee, and now it's gone, so he walked out crutches in hand. And with that tale, I was like, all right, maybe something's going on here, ... But from there, they then proceeded to extend people's legs, and I'm just gonna be straight up, given I was literally in the chair next to one such extension that I think was a total placebo. Like, the guy grabbed the woman's shoes and also didn't let people take off their shoes, oddly enough. People kept asking if they could take them off, but he insisted they stay on, ... I don't know why he said that. But anyway, he grabbed the girl's shoes and lined up her feet, and one was like, I don't know, half an inch shorter than the other one. Then he did a little shimmy where he just pushed and pulled her feet, and then like 30 seconds later realigned her feet, and boom! Same exact length. Miraculous healing? Yeah, nah. I witnessed no leg growing, only leg position and shifting, and I watched very intently. Of course, after the miracle, the woman self-reported she felt better and took a walk, and the guy went on to do the next leg extension. So yeah, that first Bethel experience definitely left a bad taste in my mouth because I'm quite confident nothing miraculous happened there. But the fact that the others believed it, and more than that, I was expected to join them in that belief, really was discouraging. Nevertheless, I tried not to let my hope die. I didn't bother to fly all the way to California to be a skeptic and boo-hoo bogus miracles. I came with a little bit of faith I had, and in hope that God might do something genuinely spectacular, and I might walk out of that place without having to worry about whether I'm going to be alive in 2 years. Hence, while I was tempted to slip into cynicism, I made the resolution that I wasn't going to allow myself to take on that mindset, and hence, vowed I would be as optimistic and hopeful as my skeptical heart would allow, until I had seen this all through. So that's what I did. After the hall orientation, they brought us into this room where there was this guy with a smile that kind of creeped me out. There's like this uncanny valley of smiles, if you know what I mean. Like it's almost genuine, but not quite. And you know something's off, but not exactly what. ... People who just have those kinds of smiles on all the time majorly throw up red flags for me. They just feel super ingenuine. So yeah, he gave us kind of like a Holy Spirit pep talk, which to his credit was actually pretty good. And then we all watched this video, also well done, before being released into the prayer room itself. Now see, the prayer room itself was much more free form than what I expected a Bethel prayer room to be like. There were people painting and dancing in the spirit, people scattered in different chairs, arranged in odd fashions, and lots of prayer and laying on of hands. There was also a worship team playing, kind of just going where they felt was best. And over in one half of the room, there were a bunch of like official prayer people praying for people. I was part of group number 14 or something, so my turn hadn't come yet. Hence, for a bit, I just waited. During that time, one of Aunt Hillary's friends, whose dad had cancer and she was getting a cloth blessed for him, prayed over me, as did Uncle Dathan and some other guy. It was honestly decently moving, that experience and what came after. While I was waiting, this guy came up on stage and shared his story about how he was healed of his colon cancer. And look, I'm just going to say, if you want a motivational speaker, this guy was not your guy. He was old, didn't speak well, was tearful, and gave way too much detail about how much he pooped out his tumor. Like if you're making things up because you're just trying to wow the crowd, then it was a garage performance XD. All that to say, the testimony he was giving, it really seemed sincere, and afterward, one of the leader guys got up and was like, guys, this is the most cancer healings I've seen in one day in my 14 years of working in the prayer rooms, and I just really feel God has an anointing of healing from cancer in store for us today. And I'm going to be honest, you don't just hear, this is the most cancer healing day I've seen in 14 years, and not think, interesting, ... Like, really, with that testimony and anointing, I genuinely started to think something might happen. Like, maybe I was wrong, and this really is how God works, and I've just been missing out. Maybe God was going to show up. So eventually, it was my group's turn. So Dad and I wandered over to the prayer people, and this couple, who I swear were hobos, pulled off the street, but not like I cared at that point, ended up praying over me for quite a while, maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes. I wasn't really paying attention to the time. It might have been much longer. Regardless, it was a pretty powerful experience. They put their hands on me, and later on some other people joined them, and I just felt very, secure. I don't really do touch, ever. So just, having 3+ pairs of hands touching me at once was already basically a first-time experience. But yeah, they prayed so definitely and forcefully, just declaring healing over me, that as it went on, a non-trivial part of me really got to thinking something might actually happen. My skepticism just kind of fell away, and I really just allowed myself to believe, maybe not all the way, but at least partially, that this might really be it, and I might really be cured. As they got toward the end, they asked me if I felt anything, and I was honest, and said I didn't. And it's not like any of the tumors could be felt, so there was really no way for me to check. So it was a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but still, I walked out pretty darn hopeful that something had shifted. Now, for the sake of continuity, I'm just going to do the whole cancer section in sequence, so I'll skip to the other big prayer for healing moment later on. The night before the day we left, there was a Father's Day service that we attended. 4 hours, mind you. And, well, for one, Sam, my cousin, actually got one of like 3 prophetic words given out to random people in the audience, so that was cool. But 2, during the sermon, the preacher, who was not married to a timeline, I assure you, XD, just happened to feel a prompting to pray over terminal illnesses. And so when he gave the call, I stood up and people just prayed over me in the middle of the Father's Day service. I don't know, maybe he had heard the crazy cancer healing stories from the prayer rooms like 2 days before or something, but it felt very targeted. Like he was just chugging along with his message and fairly out of the blue said, and I found the spot in the video recording, so this is verbatim. Here's the video if you're interested. https://www.youtube.com/watch V = S19CXLVTMFM. If you're in this palace and you're feeling something impossible, like a physical impossibility, a terminal disease, something like that, either for yourself or family member, why don't you stand up? And so I did. See? There's me right here. Oh, yeah, there's you. And yeah, people just prayed over me, and then the sermon marched on largely uneventfully, except for one point where the pastor was like, how many of you want to know a God that will give you cancer? At which point my gallows humor kicked in, and I was like, oh, me! But I only whispered it to Sam, to which he awkwardly laughed for lack of better response, XD. But anyway, at the end of that, more people prayed over me for almost an hour, and it was a very moving experience. I don't know if I ever experienced anything quite like that. Oh gosh, but the hardest part for sure was during that prayer, this one lady, I forgot her name, was just like, I feel like the devil has stolen your dreams. I feel like God's saying you're holding yourself back from dreaming about your future because you don't know if you'll see it come about, and it's safer not to dream at all. To which my inner monologue was like, first off, ouch. Why you gotta hit the nail on the head like that, ... And second off, yes, of course I'm doing that, because that's just called being smart. She went on to be like, God's telling you to dream again, that he's going to heal you of this, and you will have a future you can dream of, ... or something along those lines, ... And see, that just hit really hard, because one, and I've talked about this before, not knowing if I, well, not just that, being pretty confident I don't have a future to plan for and build into genuinely does crush me. I know most of you don't have NI, but for those of us with it, not having a future is kind of like not having a present. It's actually gutting. And 2, like an idiot in an emotionally changed atmosphere, I actually decided to believe her and stop keeping that part of me locked down, aka I let myself dream again. But then, fast forward once again, lo and behold, I got my cancer test results back, and not only have I very much not been cured of cancer, but it's doubled in size over the last 2 months, and now it's compressing one of my arteries, threatening to cut the blood supply to my brain. And man, let me just tell you, after all that hope and idiotically allowing myself to dream again, getting that result was actually crushing. Everyone talks about hope like it's this great thing. I mean, heck, it's a fruit of the Spirit and all, right? But what I can tell you from acute experience is hope is a two-edged sword. When what you hope for doesn't come true, that same blade that so powerfully cleaved the darkness and made things worth pushing through comes right back to slice into your soul. So yeah, what did I think of Bethel? Well, honestly, it hurt. I walked into it with the right mindset, a cautious optimism, but I got swept up in it all and carried away. But in a way, I could not. I was at the most charismatic church in the world, the church that reports miracles like raising the dead of all things. I came on the cancer healing day, and I genuinely have no reason, even now, to think the testimonies I heard were staged. You don't just lie about having a fist-sized tumor on the back of your leg. Like, talk about an easy fact check. And everyone spoke with such certainty and confidence, like healing people of cancer was just another Tuesday. If ever there was a place and a time to be healed of a terminal illness, it was here and now. And wouldn't that all just make sense? Like, this was why, despite having the best tumor response to ABVD my oncologist had ever seen and tolerating chemo like champ, I still hit those 10% odds of failure. It was so that once I was staring down the barrel of excruciating pain and a 30% chance of cure, God could be like, psych, JK lol, you're healed, my guy. That's how the story is supposed to go, right? I don't know. I guess I thought as much. So yeah, I allowed myself to hope too much, and I definitely felt the emotional pain of my mistake. Overall, I think I'm glad I did it. I just wish I had been a bit more guarded, so the aftermath wouldn't have hit so hard. But regardless, I've recovered now, and I'm back to full emotional health, XD. Suppose I learned something from it, so definitely not a waste. Also, here, I skipped over the rest of the California trip to follow this thread, so let me skip back in time some. Okay, so did the better healing room experience, and then we got back home, and basically nothing was happening, since all the people still had to work. Hence, I went on a fairly lengthy walk across the rural California landscape, and took the time to process and think. Then, once I got back, Annalise and I were both thoroughly bored, so we ended up playing some Minecraft on Sam's Xbox. And mostly just failing pitifully, if I'm honest, XD, for like 2 or 3 hours until Sam got back. Then from there, we decided it would be fun to do a rollerblade electric scooter combo, because the cousins own one apparently. So Sam cleaned his dad's rollerblades and took off the brake for me, because I don't use the brake, and I squeezed my feet into those. I had to take out the insoles just to get my feet to fit without my toes scrunching horribly. Before we grabbed a rope so I could hold on to Annalise and be pulled via scooter power, and we were off. It was pretty fun. Very nice weather. Actually, the whole time we were there, the weather was just fantastic. But at one point on the ride, we hit this really steep curvy section, and so I was like, well, full send, and boy did I full send, XD. So, because Sam had rotated the wheels, because as you blade, the wheels tend to become wedge-like, hence, he put the wedge on the inside to make them even out, a technique long used by the treats to ensure long-lasting rollerblade wheels, XD. That meant I didn't have the degree of traction I could have. Hence, when I tried to make the turn, my wheels were like, psych, and out went my legs from underneath me. Hence, I slide across the asphalt and into the dirt, and I got this. Woof. Which honestly is basically nothing given the speed I was going at and how bad it could have been. Hence, largely unscathed and grateful. We continued on. After that, we went to this bridge where we could see the place where, like 7 years ago, Uncle Dathan, who was with us, by the way, had dared me to jump into the Sacramento River, and I cut my foot open. So that was kind of funny. Fun fact, actually, at that time, since the cut in my foot was like 2 inches or so, it was pretty significant, my blood had pooled in a cleft in the rock, and Ben decided to slurp some... ... I think his reasoning at the time was, how many chances do you get to lick your brother's blood? Or something like that, XD. So yep, Ben took Blood Brothers to a whole new level. XD. Anyway, that aside, we found this cool concrete chessboard and thus proceed to play hand and brain chess, which was such a mistake, ... for an hour or so with Annalise being mega bored. Sorry, Annalise. Here's a picture of that. Sam and my team lost, but I assure you this was not my fault, XD. And yeah, from there, we just bladed/scootered/biked back, and it was really nice. Here's a picture. Hee. Getting pulled by scooter power is very good. Once we got back, we had food and watched Now You See Me, which is actually quite the good movie. Dude, yeah. I think I had seen it once before, ages back, but I forgot everything, so I effectively watched it for the first time. And yep, that was the day. The next morning, we went over to Uncle Doug and Aunt Amber's for breakfast. They have a new house now, right next to where the old one is, but they rent that out these days. And I also got to see Jonathan and Laurel again, so that was cool. I was very 5 last time I saw them, so my sixth self cringed at how I left things. Thus, I took intentional actions to try and repair that, because, lol, Jonathan is an ENFJ, and Laurel is an ESFJ, so, stage 5 is not a stage they be down for, XD. Anyway, the food was actually pretty good, and I got to reconnect with them, and then, as always seems to be the case, though I didn't intentionally spur it on, I got talking about Jungian psychology, and man, I don't think I've ever had more of a captive audience, XD. Well, except for Annalise and Sam, ... ESFPs, though, so what can you expect? Basically, for the next hour or so, I explained all their motivations, relationships, tendencies, etc., based on type, and people were super intrigued. And I mean, I guess fair enough. If you haven't had exposure to it before, it's like I can read your mind, so valid, I guess. Regardless, it was fun to do, and I really enjoyed sharing the knowledge, and I think they all found it quite helpful as well. After that, going on for ages, we no longer had time for the OG hike Uncle Dathan had planned for Father's Day. So instead, we went to this lake place, which honestly was probably the better call anyway. But before we got there, Sam and I drove separately in his two-seater car. Very unique car. Grabbed a few snacks and then played loud music and did a vroom. Once we got to the lake, I joined Laurel and then Annalise as well in going barefoot, and while originally I set out to catch up with Jonathan, Sam joined us and kept taking the conversation on random tangents. So I gave up that hope and instead, seeing Aunt Amber walking home, decided I'd drop back and talk with her. Hence, I got to have a pretty good conversation, probably the best we've had so far. After sitting on a log at the water's edge for a bit, we then realized everyone had also finished walking and caught up with us. So we joined them for the last of the Pringles, and I did a fun psychology thing. And then we headed out. I decided to ride with Jonathan and Laurel on the way back, because I hadn't gotten to talk to them thus far. And I think that was a good call, because the car ride back was also very interesting in terms of conversation. Very good. Once we got back, we ate food, and then attended the 4-hour-long service previously described. Well, I don't know if the service was 4 hours, but we were there for 4 hours. And then, once that wrapped up, we joined Uncle Doug, Aunt Amber, Jonathan, and Laurel for one last ice cream hurrah before heading back to our respective abodes and sleeping. The next morning, nothing was happening, so I worked on getting cancer stuff and correspondence done for the next 3 hours. I then played 2 hours of mega boring Minecraft with Annalise, before we then joined Dad, Doug, and Amber for a walk down to the sundial, and I climbed a tree. Also, totally out of order, I don't know exactly when we did this, but this happened as well. Again, what can I say? ESFPs, am I right, XD? Once we finished that walk, it was time to go, so Uncle Dathan, Sam, Dad, and I hopped in the car and got on the road. As we drove to the airport, we mostly just listened to music and small-talked, but notably, there was this big forest fire in the distance that it was cool to see grow over the course of our drive. Probably not cool for the peoples whose houses it was consuming, but from a distance, it was pretty interesting, XD. We had a bit of spare time, so we grabbed some tacos, and then they dropped us off at the airport, and we flew back home. Dad and I actually got home at like 3 in the morning, so basically all I did from that point on was crash. And there you have it. That was my trip to California. A short venture to be sure, but a worthwhile one. The next day I woke up, went to my chiropractic appointment, still a strange experience, though I'm starting to get used to it. Then I stalled some before picking up some meds from my doctor and going to see Dr. Bilica for a $500 RGCC test interpretation. He told me nothing I didn't already know. Okay, well that's not strictly speaking true, but basically nothing. So, not worth $500. But the good thing was we got clear what his role in all this was, and basically I now have him on standby if needed. But otherwise he's just going to be out of the process, which I think is a good call overall. From there, I went straight to UC Health, where I got a CT scan and they were very much correct. The contrast totally makes you feel like you're peeing your pants. Actually, big, strange feeling. I then got home, and Mom made the first of many healthy meals. From there, I called a guy Cheyenne Wolf got me in contact with, who also has cancer, and the conversation was meh at best. He's tech-y, but not as techy as me, or at the very least, didn't seem so. Hence, way too much of that conversation was spent with him just reading his interactions with ChatGPT out loud to me, and after 15 minutes, I was like, my guy, thank you for trying to share this with me, but I understand how large language model AI works, and I have access to Claude myself, so I really don't need you to read all this to me. So yeah, unfortunately, he didn't have any resources I wasn't already aware of, but hopefully the resources I sent over to him helped him out some. After that, I then took a car ride with Karina and viewed my CT scan results, which sucked. And that was a memorable car ride to describe it in a phrase. Once we wrapped that up, Karina and I were chilling overlooking the city when Caleb came up in our conversation. And so I was like, we should visit him. Because he was pretty down as he and Rebecca had broken up a few days back. And so after much persuasion with the brother, who was always for the idea, XD, And hitting up Joe, the four of us pulled Caleb from his stupor and took him out to get a drink. The occasion then became my second time drinking at a bar, of which here is a picture. Haha, look at Karina's face right there. Priceless, ... Anyway, we stayed up until like 2 in the morning or something. I think we succeeded in lifting Caleb's spirits, so I would call the whole venture a success. The next morning, I had a dentist appointment, so I attended that, and thankfully got a clean bill of dental health, aka no cavities. And then I went straight from there to LabCorp, where I got like 15 milliliters of blood drawn for all the tests. Did Ben proceed to drink that? Which I am big healthy, according to BTW, so that's a yay. And then after a while, for that, I got home just in time for Joe and Karina to arrive, 'cause the night prior, Joe didn't feel comfortable driving home due to intoxication, and so Karina took him back, and thus the two of them had to come back to get his car. And then they made me eggs, which was nice, and mediocrely tasty. Why couldn't you say like moderately or something? Moderately tasty. Decently tasty. Mediocrely tasty? Oh, and then we watched some Dear Kristen videos while we ate because those videos are fire. Once they left, I then figured out cancer stuff until it was time to pee in a cup and send that to the lab. I went straight from dropping off that package to talking with Becky Dawson about all the supplements and meds. She has been such a help during this time, like actually essential. For about 2 hours, and then I went straight from that to a pointless call with Dr. Pavlovich. So yeah, it was a pretty busy day. From there, I ate healthy food, prepared by my fabulous parents, did my first far infrared sauna, of which I shall take a brief tangent to explain. I'm going to take a drink here. So, one thing that was learned from my RGCC test is that my cancer doesn't have heat shock proteins. I say learned in quotation marks because I don't actually know if my tumors have that property. I just know the circulating tumor cells have that property. But since the circulating tumor cells are likely very genetically similar to the actual tumors from which they spring, it seems like a pretty good bet that the tumors themselves actually have that feature. And seeing as I have no way of testing that, aside from yet another biopsy, and even then, they wouldn't even run that test on the sample anyway. Actually infuriating that both biopsies UC Health refused to run the tests I asked them to, ... Like, come on! My guys, the only tests you ran were, is it Hodgkin's lymphoma? Tests, which especially in the second case, the answer is obviously yes. There is so much more I could know and be doing right now if you would just have let me test a sample you cut out of my body. Dumb medical system, ... That's not really an opinion. Not really an option, sorry. Anyway, so yes, I can safely assume my cancer tumors don't have heat shock proteins, which means if you want to stress them out enough to get them to commit suicide, to commit unalive, don't want this to get demonetized, then getting them real hot and then real cold is your best bet. Hence, where the infrared sauna comes in. Since infrared wavelengths are long, they can penetrate much deeper before depositing their energy payload. Hence, they can heat you up from the inside out and actually heat up the cancer cells themselves. And this is why I'm using this whack therapy. I don't know about its other supposed benefits. I haven't researched it. But apparently my mom believed in it enough. She already had a $600 infrared sauna sleeping bag thing. So I was like, well, might as well since we already own the equipment. Hence, I've been doing 30 minutes far infrared saunas, which get so hot and sweaty, mind you, followed by a 2-minute or so cold as the handle will go showers, which I assure you was always quite the experience, XD. So yeah, no idea if that routine is actually doing anything, but it's a big uncomfortable thing to do. Anyway, I did that for the first time, and then I decided I had done enough and had earned a break. So I put on some mostly pointless Pints with Aquinas podcast episodes and proceeded to update all my magic decks for the next 4 hours or so. During part of that time, I also listened to Ben ramble about things, and then I wrapped all that up at about 1, only getting, 2/3 done with the magic stuff because I have way too many magic decks. ... XD. The next morning, I woke up and finished what I started, because I always finish what I start. And then like 3 hours later, I ate frankly gross food, of which here is a picture. Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, it looks pretty gross. I mean, okay, the avocado, I don't know, that looks too bad. I don't know, I think that actually looks pretty good. That looks like the kind of thing I would like. What do I see in there? Is that scallions and lemons? And it might not be lemons. That might be like squash or something. I don't know. I think it looks kind of good. Oh, here we go. See, part of the Pavlovich program is usually they have you go through this detox thing where you can eat basically vegetables and some avocado, and that's like it. Hence, I started that and got to enjoy the meal you see before you, and literally ate only broccoli and cauliflower for the next like 3 meals. After I ate that, I then got to work setting up the new S23 Ultra Ben gifted me, because see, another part of this process is I need a CGM, constant glucose monitor, to see if the off-label blood sugar dropping med combined with the blood sugar dropping supplement I would be taking would murder me. But it turns out my phone was too old to run the app, so I needed a new phone. Thankfully, though, I've got a generous brother who works for Samsung, and thus his brand new phones are just lying around in his basement. So yeah, that worked out pretty well, XD. After that, I went to the chiropractor and, upon exiting said establishment, found it was pouring rain. So I dialed up Karina and was like, "Want a rain walk?" And she was like, "Yep." So I proceeded to drive to her house, only for the rain to stop in the 7 minutes it took me to get there. The clouds are far too fickle for this in this state, ... But regardless, it still smelled nice outside, and it was a good day, so we took a quick loop around the neighborhood and discussed the beauty of rolly tables. Truly science's greatest invention. Rolly table? Oh, rolly tables. I get you. And how I could persuade the Myers to get one, because they're great. After that, I got home, ate more pure vegetable food, finished the phone stuff, and then I started feeling dizzy due to one of my medications. I suspect the ivermectin, and hence just watched Dune 2 with Mom to pass the time. The next morning, I woke up to, well, first of all, that same big dizziness when I sat up, and second, my CGM being like, "Warning, you are dying," to which I was like, interesting, ... So I grabbed a bar of chocolate and headed to the emergency room, because my thought was, well, low blood sugar would explain why I've had all this major dizziness thing, and I would rather not die for non-cancer related reasons, so it seems worth it to go to the emergency room. However, as I was leaving, Dad asked me where I was going, so I told him, and he ended up tagging along. What then followed was 3 hours of basically nothing. It turns out my CGM was mega whack and inaccurate, and my blood sugar was totally fine. But they kept me like 3 hours after finding that out, just to make sure, which was a touch vexing, but also fair enough. During that time, 2 different doctors were like, "If I could, I would force you to go get traditional cancer treatment, but I can't, and you're an idiot for trying this," in so many words, XD. So that was fun. Yet, the one plus side to it all was that I did get to see how my blood work was doing, because my oncologist is no longer ordering that for me. So it wasn't all a waste. Once I got home, I still felt very dizzy, but I talked with Noah anyway, and that was a good discussion. Benj then was like, "What you doing?" in typical Isabella fashion. And so he came over and we wanted to play table tennis. But alas, the place where the paddles were held was closed, and we only had one paddle of our own. Hence, with an excuse in hand, we yeeted our shoes and journeyed barefoot through creek and cross concrete to Dick's Sporting Goods. The first 4 miles we did barefoot, but after that, both of us were getting nasty blisters, and Benj had cut his foot, probably from the creek, so we decided to put our shoes back on. Here's the route we took. I'm going to take a quick, brief intermission. This is a really, really long life update email, and I'm going to just, instead of recording it in 2 parts, I'm just going to kind of vibe for a second. I think I've only got, there's a lot of pictures coming up, so hopefully it's not that long left. I like recording these, but oh my goodness, the last couple have been really, really long. I have no clue who listens to these either. I think I first did Alex Life Update emails, I did a few about 3 years ago. I did a few of them, back when Joe James would edit. And I never, I don't know, I never really knew where they got sent off to, I guess. And, I've been doing these again now for at least a few months. And yeah, honestly, I have absolutely no clue who, if anybody, listens to these. But hi, if you're listening. I'm taking a brief intermission for those of you just now joining in. Not like that's a thing, but it's not a live stream. But anyway, Alex knows me. I'm an ENTP, so I need to take a second to kind of NE ramble a little in order to get my mojo back. So that's just kind of taking a brief break here. But anyway, yeah, I have no clue who this goes to. Feel free to skip this part. I'm just going to take another few seconds. But yeah, anyway. I have no idea who listens to this. Maybe nobody. Maybe Alex just does this as the best troll of all time. He makes me sit down and record these, and literally nobody listens to it. He just sends it out into an empty vacuum that no one listens to. Who knows? But if you're a listener, what do you do while you listen to this? Do you make it like an occasion to oh honey, the Life Update email came out. Let's sit down and listen to it. You just sit and listen? Or do you people drive and put it on like a podcast? Do you listen to it while you eat? Before bed? Those of you who listen, I genuinely wonder what you do, how you go about listening to these. But anyway, it's probably good enough for an intermission. This is already 45 minutes, guys. Give me a break. I earned at least a little 2-minute intermission here. This was 45 minutes. Okay. All right, getting back to Alex and Benj. Out for a walk, walking along the creek. Benj cut his foot. Here's a picture that's a map of their path thing. Okay. Fairly short for Benj and my usual walk length, but honestly pretty ideal in my opinion. We did it in under 3 hours, and I know this because the whole way to Dick's and the whole way back, we listened to the Personality Hacker podcasts for the ISTP and ENTJ. First, we listened to the ISTP at the same time, then the ENTJ at the same time, and those podcasts combined were less than 3 hours long. It probably took us about 2 hours and 45 minutes for the walking part. Maybe a little less. So yeah, that was honestly a really good time. I would like to do that again. Once we got back, Benj ate food with me as we watched the next episode of Saga of Tanya the Evil. We watched one episode every month or so, and it's great, XD. Then Benj and I got scheming and decided now was the time to make a beautiful work of art. Hence, we journeyed to Ellerslie, where we consulted with Grace, Taylor, Elias, and Anika. And then, having been given the raw material, we then went back to Benj's house, where we finalized the artwork, making it just right, before then delivering it to a certain moment aforementioned. It was glorious! From there, Benj took me home, and I just went to sleep. The next morning, while I had finished setting up the phone, I hadn't finished transferring everything over to it, so I did that. I then did an infrared sauna while talking to Ben, ate food that wasn't pure vegetables and thus was so much better by comparison. Fruits taste so good after just broccoli and cauliflower, let me tell ya. I then went over with Benj and worked out at the CSU gym with him. That was good. Once we got back, Braden came over and we had some magic games, and then talked about spiral dynamics for a spat. Braden handled that exceptionally well, I must say. After he left, my mother, seeing the disarray of my feet and hearing them cry out for mercy, took pity on them and rendered them a holy washing, cleansing them from all unrighteousness, meaning she gave me a foot scrub, and I was grateful, XD. I then read my cancer book for about an hour before going to bed. The next morning was Sunday, and hence church. I attended. I learned to walk like Elsa. What? but we don't talk about that, dot, dot, dot. Then we squeezed round a table and we talked about all the things. I feel like Micah and Nessa opened up for the first time, so that was cool. However, I had to leave abruptly due to the need to consume food, so that was a bummer. Once I got home, I ate said food and took all the supplements. In total, I take 39 pills a day, as well as 3 liquid doses of things, which if we count each as a pill, would bump me to 46. Oh, and the melatonin is technically 51, but that feels disingenuous, so let's say approximately 45 pills a day. Still, only 1/4 the amount of pancreatic enzyme people would have me do, though, XD. Anyway, I then did something cancer-related. Can't remember what. And proceeded to run over to the CSU gym, which was big good, mostly because I felt good afterward, and I ran hard, even if my time was mid. I then got home, did food and pills round 2, and then I started on a lovely dosage sheet. So I don't know how much of each drug I need, and when and thus I can build my pill boxes. The next morning I continued my work on creating that dosage sheet. Then I called with Liam briefly. That was uneventful. From there I finished figuring out all the doses and supplement times, printed it on some fancy paper, and then burned the edges to give it an edgy flair. I don't know if that's intended to be a pun or not, XD. Once I finished that, I then ate the food and went to go play Magic at Joe's, which, during the drive, there occurred a beautiful thing. As I was just chilling at the stoplight, the window of the car next to me rolled down, and 2 females were like, "I love the fire. Did you paint that yourself?" To which I was like, lower shades, "You know it, babe." Sorry, I just had to put that in there. No, I actually responded with like, "Yeah, it was a ton of work." Or something like that, XD. So yeah, I got a compliment. Take that, all you Phoenix haters, on my car's paint job. I think this is like a 3rd compliment I've got just driving around so far. Ha! Some people know good taste when they see it. Wink. Anyway, I played some good good magic at Joe's with Neo, Sydney, Joe, Benj, Sam, and Seth for like 4 hours. And then we had D&D, at the tail end of which Jake uncharacteristically stopped by and joined in for a few magic games. Cameo! But didn't get to personally play him as Benj and I were 1v1ing. From there it was just back home, so Neo and I talked, I dropped him off, and then the last thing that happened was Samantha, someone I knew from my SE days, commented on one of my ancient documents, so that was kind of out of nowhere and a blast from the past. The next morning I did an infrared sauna, took the coldest of showers, proceeded to build my pill boxes using my super simple, super helpful, super dosage sheet. Once that was completed, I ate food and took the pills, and therefore went over to CSU's gym to work out, which I did. I then sorted through some of Connor Price, an artist Ben showed me, and I've been digging since then. As I finished, the time came wherein the Macy's had invited us to a chill little dinner thing over at Timnath Lake, which was actually pretty nice. I chatted with Amelia some, then Ben and I went out paddleboarding on the lake and talked a bit, of which here is a picture Mom took. Then, after taking my drugs, my body was like, "Hold up." So I kind of just laid on the ground for a bit till I got a text from Benj being like, "Yo, you free?" To which I was like, "I'm an American, I'm always free." No, actually, Alex was like, "If you come and get me, then yes." So he drove over in short order, and, due to Ben's suggestion, Benj and I both paddleboarded out as the sun was setting, and oh my gosh, that was such a good idea. It was just so tranquil and peaceful, actually the most beauty. We just sat out there in silence for like 30 minutes or so as we watched the sun set over the water. Actually so pretty. Here's some pictures Benj took. Oh, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, not bad. Here's a picture of us paddling back from Mom? Maybe the pictures from Mom? So yeah, that was just one of those rare golden moments for me. No pun intended. Like one of those moments that is just a spark of ecstasy hidden in the day of mundane happenings. Very good. From there, Benj, Ben, and I all hoped in Benj's car, picked up Karina from the Myers house, and then journeyed to Boulder, singing all the songs big loud. Once there, Benj and I barefooted up, and then we walked down Pearl Street, of which, here is a pic. Pretty decent as far as the street goes. We then went through some sketchy back alley-like places, walked along the river some before arriving at this playground, which we proceeded to climb upon. Here is a picture. Benj jumped from the roof parkour of one of the buildings and tried grab the netting on the bridge beneath it, but ended up just hitting the squishy playground with a big roof. Instead, he got close, though. Thankfully, we have screenshotted video to capture that great moment. That's funny. Thankfully, we have screenshotted video to capture that great moment for you all. After that glorious moment, we then just walked around some more. And then we reconvened the car and journeyed up a cliffside road to this really cool rock Ben knew of that overlooked the city. Gosh, that was such a good view. Definitely a bit of a sketchy climb, especially in the dark, so Karina didn't end up coming with us. But man, it was so worth it. Here's some pictures. After that, we deemed it a good idea to drive back, since Karina had work in the morning and I was feeling very tired. I had slept some on the way back. I honestly probably pushed myself too far with that adventure in particular because my body just isn't as hardy these days with the drugs and all, ... The next morning, I slept in till 11, got up, took some drugs, heck yeah, and then just felt garbage. So yeah, taking drugs will do that. So I went back to sleep and slept till 1:30 when Dad woke me up. After that, I ate food, sent in a genetics test, and also just noticed I was pretty irritable. Like, usually, it takes quite a lot to frustrate or annoy me, but I noticed that day, in particular, my usually emotional resilience was just gone, and way more things were upsetting me than they usually would. I attributed it to the drugs. I decided that even though I felt bad, it was still best to do a run. So I did, and that was a good call. I always feel so much better after a good run. As soon as I finished that up, I went over to Wolverine Farm and chatted with Katie's brother, Moses, about orthodoxy. However, we didn't get all that far as I realized that the conversation I intended to have would best be done, if possible, with my acquaintance Alexander being in the room so that he and Moses could pseudo-fact-check each other. Because unfortunately, the debate really is quite nuanced, and it would be uniquely advantageous to have a conversation where both parties got a voice, and I wasn't just hearing one side of the story all the time. Hence, I kind of put our talk on hold and called it a bit short in hopes that the combo meeting would occur, but we have yet to see if that's actually going to happen, ... Once I got back home from that, I then proceeded to read my cancer book till 9 or so, and then went to sleep. I kind of felt garbage that whole day, and if I learned anything from chemo, it's that when I feel bad, I sleep. The next morning, I still felt bad, though, even with all the sleep. I finished sorting Connor Price music, and then I ate food while watching a YouTube channel I've been loving as of late called CP Gray. Guarantee he is an ISTP or an INTP. So much TI energy. But Alex, you might ask, though I significantly doubt any of you were thinking this, XD, why are you watching YouTube videos while you eat instead of anime? Well, random nameless reader, I'm so glad you asked that. The answer is because a while back, I was out of anime that were clean, and so Ben got cooking for me and started me on this pseudo-Breaking Bad-like anime. And of course, I started it right. Well then, you see, it got immensely slow and I got immensely bored. But, as has been my policy for God knows how long, I finished the anime I start. Hence, I found myself in a bind of my own making. I wanted to watch anime, but I was trapped, only able to watch an anime that bored me so intensely I would rather watch, well, most anything else. Hence the CP Gray, ... We need to think of a cool food name for Funame. You know, like you get like Funame, Fanime. We need like FooTube or something like that for when you go watch YouTube instead. Anyway, as I finished up the food, Benj came over and used my tools to change his oil, and that was a beautiful experience, mostly because he was just robustly independent and competent. Like, I had to hold Neo and John's hand as I taught them how to change their oil, but Benj, before he came, all ready to watch some videos on how to do it, and had bought the necessary parts and fluids already. And while there was one point where I stepped in because he was jacking up his car sketchily and I didn't want him to accidentally wreck things, other than that, he did the whole thing with ease and proficiency, hence the beauty. Anyway, as he did that, I read my cancer book. I then went to the chiropractor, stopped over on my way back to play some table tennis with Benj. Then I got back, ate the food, then finally finished my cancer book. Only to start the next of like 4 more I need to read, XD. It was at this point Joe came over and we walked over to City Park and talked. Great things came out of that conversation, after which I went to bed and did sleep. The morning I woke up, did my infrared sauna cold shower combo, took pills, and then proceeded to throw up for the first time in ages. See, the last time I threw up, I was literally 13, and hence my childhood recollection of that moment, as most childhood recollections are, was pure horror and death. Hence, ever since that point, I have avoided throwing up at all costs. Do not underestimate my resolve to hold it in, XD. And while that robust resolve got me through literally all of chemo, it turns out that even it wasn't enough to fight back the off-label drugs. So yeah, after like 10 years, I threw up for the first time, and honestly, it wasn't nearly as bad as I remembered it being. Unpleasant? Oh, sure. But not the objective death my baby brain memory claimed it was. So yeah, regardless though, that should give you an idea of how bad I felt, and it was very unfortunate. Eventually, I got myself to eat some food, and I dropped the med I guess was the culprit from my drug regimens for that day and the next. I then proceeded to do everything slow and be rather unproductive. But because it's part of my protocol, I did still end up pushing myself to work out with Ben, even though I felt pretty darn gross by the end. After I made it through that, I then worked on this life update a bit, tentatively ate a meal, and decided I would have to bail on dancing, which was a big sad. I then went over to John's house, played a tiny bit of Magic, and proceeded to huddle in a Marian blanket as we caught up. I made my shipping cost for this Shieldred MTG card be a blanket I could use when we had our porch chats. Thus, of course, John found a blanket with a giant painting of the Theotokos on it, XD. That was a decent chat. Also, I gave Noah Myers access... Who's Noah Myers? Access to my lines to live by doc. Access to my lines to live by doc. And he enjoyed a good number of the quotes I had there. Once I got back, I cracked Katie's 2.0 letter, which I will say was much better than the first, though no less lengthy, XD. And then I went to sleep. The next morning, I did a bunch of small things before consuming the food and the drugs. I then called Jordan and caught up with him, which was good. That man works so much these days, but things are starting to come together for him, so I'm pumped about that. That call ended once Joe arrived. We then played Magic for a few hours, and then he joined me over at CSU Gym, where we did our own individual workouts. I ran, and he lifted. And then after that, as we waited for Karina to arrive, we shot 3-pointers. Now see, originally I was winning because lol, tertiary SE, but after like 15 minutes or so, Joe's SI kicked in, and he absolutely crushed me. And it was very sad, ... After that, Karina arrived, and we all went and swam in the CSU pool, did some rock climbing challenges on the wall over the pool, and we all failed at the same spot, so it was a tie. And then we played a 3-person pool volleyball in which I destroyed them. And yeah, other than that, we just chilled in the hot tub and talked. It was a good time. From there, we parted ways, and I came home to discover Grace had briefly returned to our abode. Hence, she regaled us with tales of her escapades and made explicit her feelings of our absolute irrelevance to her in this season of life. She was straight up like, yeah, though I would miss you guys and my friends, but I honestly don't at all, ... To which I was like, fair enough. Honestly, while that sounds harsh to a lot of people, I think I see where Grace is coming from, and in some ways I think it's healthy. Like, being able to be fully in the moment, living where you're at, and investing in the people you can actually affect in that moment seems like a particularly good move to me. I mean, sure, but maybe don't totally disregard the people you're not around and forget the investment they've put into you. But still, I think the present and the proximate is the best place to spend the majority of your mental energy. Wink. Ha! That sounds like a little bit of foreshadowing for the next life update email that includes our conversation on Sunday. After Grace left, it started to rain, so I decided to take a rain walk while listening to good music. Thus, since they live just across campus, I went over to Neo and Sydney's and roped them into joining me, though at that point the rain had all but stopped, which was a mega sad. That time was meh, if I'm honest, but even so, it was worth doing. The next morning was church, and I decided it would be fun to share the hat model with all the people, so I basically just ranted, with some teaching assistance from Jake, about that till I had to go. Honestly, great time, though. I love teaching people stuff like that. At home, I ate the food, then went over to Neo and Sydney's for D&D, which I played, and we murdered the big bad. Though to be fair, my character did absolutely zero murdering. He just stood there and practiced not dying. I then went home for food and drugs, did that, then called with William, where we discussed a number of things, including his plans for coming over here to America. Then after that, I did an infrared sauna and worked on this life update, before going to bed at like midnight. The next morning, I had a call with my Pavlovchian nutritionist, which Dad joined me for, and that went quite well. I think we're starting to get a handle on food stuff during this season. From there, I did more Life Update work, did a host of doctor paperwork, and then drove to Loveland to meet with yet another new doc, Dr. Mallory, who is this Chad Orthodox guy whose most interesting feature is he used the sterile paper on the bed thing like a giant whiteboard. Never seen a doc do that before. Really? I feel like a lot of them do that. Still, I didn't feel like it was much of a conversation. More like I was talked at. But he did seem more knowledgeable and less quack than most of the people I've met so far, so I think I'm going to try and get him on my team. On our way home, I stopped by Griffin Games to see if they had my long-lost dice, but the answer was unfortunately no, so those are still missing, which is quite sad. I then went on a run before going to the Jameses for D&D, which was marvelous. Oh, we also watched an episode of Blue Lock again for the first time in months, and may Maid Barrow live on forever in our hearts and minds, ... And that image seared in my brain, I drove home listening to Personality Hacker in the car. Finally, as for yesterday, I arose and put together my pill box for the week, which is absolutely stuffed with pills, by the way. Can barely fit them all in the containers. I then ate food and finally finished the super boring anime I was on, which means, lol, I started a new anime and I'm actually enjoying anime again. So that was great. It's surprising how much having a good anime to watch while I eat brightens my day. As I was finishing up that food-consuming process, Benj, once again, was like, "Yo, you free?" To which I was like, "Sure," and we played some table tennis with our newly purchased paddles over at the Durrell Center till my speaker died. Something's been up with it lately, and it keeps dying after only like an hour. And then we went over to the CSU gym and rock climbed. I only got 1-3, but mostly that's because my grip strength is garbage. Benj successfully completed one of the two hardest runs they had, 8s, but he couldn't quite get the other one. We then did rock climbing challenges on the wall over the CSU pool, cause lol, much bigger and easier holds. And of course, Benj still won that, but I felt accomplished nonetheless. Then we just chilled in the hot tub and had one of the best conversations we've had so far. Benj and I don't talk much. We mostly do. So it's fairly rare for us to have good conversations, ... From there, as we drove to Ellerslie, I then explained to him Jungian fixations, which are big interesting, a conclusion he echoes. And then we got to Ellerslie, where we sat down at a picnic table, and Grace brought me to my quarry. See, out of the blue, Grace was like, "Can you come type this guy? Because I can't figure out his type, ... So I appeared and proceeded to stare into this man's soul. But lo and behold, I was staring into my own soul. For as luck would have it, dun dun dun, it turned out he was an ENTJ, which was pretty crazy, because you never see us in the wild like that. So that was very unusual, but I'm pretty darn confident he is, in fact, a fellow ENTJ. And of course, he was super intrigued and kept getting his mind blown about how I knew all these things about him without ever having met him before. After like 15 minutes, he straight up asked me if I would be willing to mentor him. XD. That's how you know he's an ENTJ, because what other type would do that, XD? To which I was like, I don't know about full-fledged mentorship, but I would be happy to provide you resources and help you if you get mega stuck, aka, you do all the work and I help you if you really need it, mentorship, XD. So he got my number, and we'll see where that goes. I actually see so much of my younger self in that guy, and I felt this weird compulsion to help him along. He's still young and dumb, but the things he was expressing, it was like looking at myself 6 years ago. And I know that when I was at that age, I wished so hard that someone understood me and could have helped me with all the existential questions I was wrestling with. So if this guy ends up taking me up on the offer, I'm going to try to be there for him. You see, while being the rarest type is great for the ENTJ ego and all, because, we need more reasons to think we're better than everybody else, XD, you have to understand that you just don't understand us. And it's quite the lonely road because there just aren't people out there that know what it's like to be us. And sure, we are uniquely well equipped for solo gameplay, and if any type can make it without anyone else's help, it's us. But still, You don't quite know what it feels like to never meet anyone quite like you. ... I think that fact is a big part of why we all think we're the best and oh so special. Because we genuinely have never met anyone else of our same type. Like, I've only ever met, not am friends with, mind you, but straight up met now 4 other ENTJs than myself in my life. And as these emails make evident, I know a lot of people. So yeah, just finding someone else that's an ENTJ is practically a miracle. But having that person be someone you can look up to and learn from, is almost unheard of. I still haven't found such a person personally, though. I've been searching ever since I was this guy's age. Anyway, it was quite an intriguing meeting, and I'm very glad I did it. That conversation got cut a bit short, though, since they had a sermon they had to attend. So once that wrapped up, Benj took me back home because we carpooled, and we parted ways. I then proceeded to do Funime plus pills. After that, I got some things done, did an infrared sauna while talking to Mom, and then worked on this life update until bed. Regarding today, I basically woke up at noon, ate food, and watched some anime, and then I went over to the Bowens and have worked on this life update since. And with that, I welcome you all to the past present. The present for me, but the past by the time this thing finally gets sent out. XD.